Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business from Scratch podcast. I'm your host, Abby McGee, and I'm so excited about today's guest. She is a longtime client of my business, Salt and Charm, and someone that I look up to as kind of a local business giant and hospitality legend. There's a moment in every successful entrepreneur's story that can make them look like an overnight success. A viral post, a big break, a national spotlight. But what most people don't see is the years of quiet work that come before that moment. Today's guest, Danielle Mahon, owner of Topsail Steamer, is known by many for her appearance on Shark Tank, where she didn't just pitch, but walked away with a deal. But what we're really talking about today isn't Shark Tank. We are going to dive deep into what it takes to build something strong enough to withstand that kind of visibility and what happens when preparation finally meets opportunity. I'm so glad you're here. This is going to be a good one, so let's get started. You're listening to Business from Scratch, the podcast for people building businesses they love without losing themselves along the way. I'm your host, Abby McGee. Let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. I have so many questions.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to be here, especially doing something here in the area where, I started the business, where I live, where I'm from.
Well, I have a lot of questions about Shark Tank, but I want to go back before Shark Tank and tell me a little bit about, I don't know this story, and I'm surprised that I don't. Tell me how Topsail Steamer started and what those early years look like.
Okay. So I think it's probably good to frame it in, what my past was and my history. I was, because sometimes I wake up every day and I'm like, what? How did I get here? How do I have a seafood business? So I was, my career was all in sales in corporate America.
Okay.
With the last 10 to 12 years being in the biotech and life science industries.
Interesting.
Not much learning about shrimp in those jobs.
No, that's a big jump.
Yep. But I will say that I was always someone who looked at things through the lens of, possibility. My dad was an entrepreneur way back in the 70s when, I'm not even sure a lot of people even, talked about entrepreneurs. So he modeled it for me. And I think my dad always saw things through, he didn't see limits, he just saw possibilities. And so that was modeled for me from such an early age that I definitely was someone who looked at lots of things through the lens of, ooh, I wonder if that could be a business. I wonder if that could be a business. I'd love to do that one day. Um, and along the way there was lots of ideas. Some good, some not so great.
Ideas that you actually fleshed out into a business? Some
No,
of them,
ideas
or
that you'd be
just
like, that it would start to go down the road and explore and
Mhm.
try or present to friends and family or
Okay.
think about. And none of them really ever got to the point where it's something that I was, that I actually launched. But I was always scanning for those, types of things. And
Mhm.
so this particular um, idea came. I was on a girls' weekend with my mom and my sister, and we were in the Outer Banks, and it was the off season. And we went to lunch. We went to a full service restaurant for lunch,
Mhm.
and we were sitting at the bar. And I noticed there was a stream of people coming in and out. And what this restaurant did was they had a counter where they were giving them, the old black and white lobster pots, enamel
Mhm.
pots.
Mhm.
Um, they were picking up the pot and leaving, and so I was like, "Oh, what is that?" And so they were actually making, a seafood boil in those pots. Customers were coming, getting them, taking home, cooking them, and then bringing the pot back the next day.
Okay.
And that's for me when the light bulb just
Uh-huh.
went off, and I thought, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's a really good idea." And I think you could do that without a full service restaurant or without
Mhm.
a seafood market. And I am originally from New Jersey. Some of my favorite memories are we would spread out brown paper, catch blue crabs, and
Mhm.
pick them all night long,
Mhm.
and just spend hours around the table and picnic tables. And so it's something I always felt kind of emotionally attached to, right? And
Mhm.
so for the years that we moved to North Carolina in 2003, and we immediately we moved to Raleigh, and one of the things I wanted to do first was to say, "Well, where's our beach gonna be?"
Mhm.
And that's when we found Topsail, and we
Okay.
loved it.
Mhm.
And, we would do the same thing. People would come to visit, and we'd go to the seafood market, and, we'd get the crab and the shrimp and do the boils and sit around all night, and, that's just something we really looked forward to, friends and family. So, I think that's another reason why when the idea for the business model came up, it was so connected to an experience that I just
Mhm.
loved,
Yeah.
you know?
I think a business that's in the hospitality genre really benefits from that too. It is part of the story. It's part of what you're selling. It is a feeling, when you feed people, it's that creates a feeling, that creates a mood in their homes. And it's one of the most intimate things that you can give to somebody is that gift of community around a table, right? And so the fact that you had that as your family history is incredibly helpful in knowing how to market it, how to build it.
Yeah, because it wasn't just a concept, it just wasn't a revenue generating
Mhm,
business model, it was, that's exactly it. It was more than a food concept. It was based in connection, in emotion,
mhm.
tradition, celebration, all
Yeah,
those things. So that's exactly right. When you can couple those two together, and for me, as I look back, I'm sure that's why this particular idea got traction, and that
mhm,
I actually continued on because I think it was a combination of those both things. I could really understand the why behind
yeah.
why I would want to do it.
So did you was what was the first step? Did you, like, test it out on friends and family and make buckets and give it to them and see how it went?
Yep, lots of neighborhood, seafood boils at Raleigh in the time where I was still
Mhm.
living in Raleigh. Tested it out a ton of times with, focus groups that were full of my friends.
Right.
Um, and then I just everything for me, the everything seemed to, fall into place in terms of, if I'd go one step further, like, well, let me look and see if I could find a location. How much would that cost? Sure enough, the perfect location for a very low price was available, right?
Mhm,
Um, my aunt gave because at the time, I was working a good job.
mhm.
Both kids, I was just becoming an empty nester, so two kids in college. Um, it was it was gonna be hard to say, "I'm gonna quit my job."
Right.
Oh, and by the way, I need to invest in the upfit and to get the
Mhm.
business started. So I had my aunt, she offered me a $75,000 loan to get started. So I had that solution.
Amazing.
Um, and, so I always also like to say that, um, my, my husband is let me start by saying he's my biggest supporter, but
Mhm.
generally in relationships, there's, a a risky
Yes.
one and a
Uh-huh.
risk adverse one. So
Yes.
clearly, me as the entrepreneur is a little bit more on the risk side. So he tried to ignore it for a little while. He was hoping that, there was a lot of talk about this business over here, but it was going to require us to make a huge leap. We are going to have to sell our house in Raleigh, move to the beach. We had a very small place at the beach. Um, and then cut off my income, it take m take
So
on debt.
you quit your job
Yeah,
immediately?
I quit it. I built yep, I started to build the model, and we started to do the upfit, and we knew we were gonna open up in March of 2017, and I quit my job in February. Um,
That is risky.
it was risky.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. It was risky, and I opened up the store in March of 2017 with just myself and the kids would help on the weekends when, come from college. One was
Mhm.
at UNCW, one was at, ECU, and some of their friends.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was risky.
Yeah.
But well, I'll go back to my husband, but when he realized that it was, getting that I had a lot of belief in it and that
Mhm.
I had a lot of the pieces in place, eventually he said, "Okay, I have a ton of confidence and belief in you, and if you
Mhm.
think that this thing's gonna work, then I'm all in. Let's go."
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so from that time, you grew to how many locations before you decided to look at Shark Tank? How many locations did you grow to?
Well, so I opened up the first location in March of 2017 and
Mhm.
then went immediately in less than 12 months, decided to expand to a location in Wrightsville Beach. So, adjacent market.
Mhm.
Um, both of those stores were open. So then come to the fall of 2018, we had Florence.
Mhm.
So, that was pretty devastating for us
Right.
because it was gonna cut off the rental market by we were hearing, 60% of homes were impacted. Um, at that point, my biggest, concern was how do we keep afloat? How do we keep revenue afloat?
Mhm.
What do we do? So, at that point, I started concentrating on figuring out a way if customers couldn't get to us, could we get to them? So, I really focused on, can we ship this thing? Um,
Which
and
I imagine is logistically very challenging
very challenging.
and
Um,
cost prohibitive, probably.
yes, but at that point, there was no other
You had to
option.
do
You
something.
have to do something,
Mhm.
right? So I did figure out how to pack it with ice packs, and we got the all the shipping materials,
Mhm.
and we started to ship, and eh, I would get like 5 orders, and I would spend all day on 5 figuring out getting the components, doing
Uh-huh.
it, shipping it, driving it to UPS, all of that. But it was 2 things. It was showing me 2 things. 1, we had customer demand, and we were only really reaching out to the customers we had had in the previous seasons, 2
Mhm.
2 summers we had. And we and it was helping to keep us afloat,
Right.
right? But I knew at that point that we I was looking for answers about how could we possibly scale that, and also thinking about growing in locations, right?
Mhm.
So I went online, and you'll see this is a common thread because that's kind of how Shark Tank happened too. I went online and I found Goldbelly. And Goldbelly at the time was an online platform for local mom and pop shops,
Mhm.
niche food providers to be able to send their products across the country. So, like, if you have your favorite deep dish pizza from Chicago, you
Right.
could get it shipped. So I applied, and they were only taking 1% of the applicants at the time. They sent my pot off to Manhattan, and I remember they
Mhm.
sent me a picture of, the pot in a window with skyscrapers behind it, that said
Uh-huh.
Topsail Steamer.
Uh-huh.
And they loved it, and I got online with them, and we started we started shipping with them at the end of February 2020.
So did they help you know how to ship,
They
the logistics of it?
they take care of all of the UPS, customer service, order, all of that, and then they did evaluate our cold chain to make sure it
Mhm.
was, okay.
Right.
Um, but the timing was really, the amazing part because it was the end of February 2020, just before everything shut down for COVID.
Uh-huh.
So, when eh, I had trouble with 6 pots a day, we got up to over 400 a day during COVID. I
Wow.
know, it was crazy. So we kept
Wow. And doing all of that out of your
Surf City location.
little shop.
Mhm. But, we were closed for a while for
Yeah.
COVID until we could open up again. It was really great because it helped keep all my workers employed.
Mhm.
That's what we did. It gained a lot of exposure for us nationwide. And then,
Mhm.
and what it did for me too was it really, because it validated for me that we weren't just a local concept
Mhm.
because we were shipping them. Our second highest state is California.
Wow.
I know. So that's when I knew that we should look at, continuing to open up other locations. And so then back to your original question, yes, we went to New Jersey because I'm originally from there. I
Mhm.
have a lot of network.
Mhm.
I know the locations, I know the markets, and then I have a lot of support and network up there. So a lot of people would say, "Well, why would you go from North Carolina to New Jersey?" But I just
Mhm.
knew it so well.
Right.
So, and so then I think I got up to maybe 6 stores that I owned. Um, Delaware, New Jersey, and North Carolina. And that's when we knew we had to make a decision about how are we going to continue to grow? Because you
Mhm.
can either, at that point, to open up brick and mortars, you'll have to bring in an investor,
Mhm.
um, or you can look at franchising. So I looked at franchising, and I realized that I loved that concept of being able to partner with other like-minded entrepreneurs
Mhm.
who maybe didn't have the idea, but really wanted to grow a business.
Right.
So then we got franchising underway, and as we sit today, we have 11 locations open. I'm down to 3 of the corporate stores. I've sold some of my previous corporate stores to franchisees,
Okay.
um, and we are in, New Jersey, Delaware, North Carolina, Alabama, and Florida. We have a store in Charlotte.
Okay.
So, we feel like one of the things that we're testing and that we feel pretty confident in is that this isn't just a local concept, right?
Mhm.
Because of the what we've heard from Goldbelly and seen where
Mhm.
the pots have been shipped, but it there's a lot of things about the meal, right? So it's a obviously it's a delicious premium seafood product, but it's convenient.
Mhm.
It's a kit, right? So if you're a little apprehensive about cooking seafood, we take all of that out of it
Mhm.
for you. And then it's off premise, which you've seen that there's been a big shift from consumer demand after COVID for people wanting an off premise experience.
Yeah.
So it does that as well. And there's all the emotion and
Mhm.
celebration tradition connected to it. Um, so we feel like it's something it's not just a coastal vacation
Mhm.
market brand, that
Yeah.
something we could do. Um, so we have a store in Charlotte, and we've just opened one in a place called Royal Palm, Florida, which is about 25 minutes outside of West Palm Beach.
Okay.
Mhm.
So at what point did you was your drive to try and get first of all, you applied for Shark Tank or did
Mhm.
they approach you?
No, I applied.
Okay. So what was the catalyst for you wanting, needing
Mhm.
that?
So I knew that even with franchising, we were still gonna have a challenge, and
Mhm.
it's because we were not a known brand, but
Mhm.
also because we really didn't fit into a category, right?
Right.
And when you don't check a box, people have a hard time understanding who you are
Mhm.
because we're not a quick service restaurant and we're not fine dining, eat
Mhm.
in. However, our price point, our average check price is about $160,
Mhm.
and we're not really a traditional to go,
And you're
right?
not a
And we're not
caterer.
a caterer,
Yeah.
so we really have a tough time fitting into a category.
Mhm.
So those 2 obstacles, I was thinking like, how do we and we didn't have the funds to do a national ad campaign,
Mhm.
commercial, like, because you almost need to visualize it and see it, and so there's a customer education to explaining what the
Mhm.
product is, and then we also, we're also not very known except for
Right.
regionally. So I was watching Shark Tank one night and I thought, "Ugh, well, there's the answer,
Mhm.
right? What if I could get on TV and not only show the product and explain the business, and then, that would give us massive exposure,
Mhm.
um, and it would allow us to tell the story. But then, and oh, by the way, wouldn't it be awesome to get a strategic partner
Right.
to help who's who's been familiar with how to
Who
scale
knows that?
businesses.
Yeah.
Yes. So, um, I thought, well, one of the things too, um, this is definitely something that a mindset that I have used for a lot of the major decisions that I've made as a founder and also personally is that I really truly believe that there's opportunities in obstacles, right? So
For sure.
you just need to stop for a second and commit to looking for the opportunity, right? So, um, and I don't see boundaries very well either, right?
Successful entrepreneurs usually don't.
Usually don't.
Yes.
So I thought, "Well, why not? I'm just gonna apply."
Uh-huh.
So I just went online that night, sitting on the couch, and I applied to Shark Tank. I didn't really tell anybody. I just told just my husband. I'm like,
Mhm.
"I'm applying to Shark Tank, but I'm not gonna tell anybody just yet."
Mhm.
Um, because the numbers are, about 40,000 people apply every season,
Mhm.
and they take about 150.
Wow.
Yeah,
The odds are not in your
the
favor.
odds are not in your favor. No. Um, but I had it happen with Gold Belly, and, the timing was right there, and, so I just was like, "Well, I mean, why not try?"
Mhm.
So when I got the first call, and then the second call, and then the third call, I was like, "Oof," I think this is something.
Mm. Mhm.
So the way it works is it's a very long, rigorous process of, interviews and
Mhm.
videos, um,
I imagine if they're only taking 150 out of that many, the selection process is very rigorous and stressful.
very stressful,
Yeah.
and a lot of work
Yeah.
with a ton of uncertainty. Um, so it's about I applied in January.
Mhm.
Um, I probably started working with them in February along the process, and all they do is tell you, "Hey, there's these couple weeks in June, leave open on your calendar."
Mhm.
And then it is a long, long process. And if you are going to film, they don't let you know until about 2 weeks before.
Wow.
So your team is working because it is, it's business plans, and
Mhm.
I mean, it is just, it's, everything you see on the set is you design that,
You're taking it.
you send it out,
Mhm.
that's all you. Um, So yeah, lots of stress and lots of work. But
Yeah.
I mean, as we were going through it, there was such an element of excitement on my team,
Mhm.
right? It's just
Yeah. I bet that that kind of process and that kind of detail, even if you don't make it on the show, is extremely helpful. You probably learn a lot about yourself and your business that you had either you didn't know that you needed to know, or you had ignored it, or were afraid of it. Um, in a very small scale, when somebody nominated Salt and Charm for the Coastal Entrepreneur Award, there's a little bit of that, right? You had to
mhm,
go interview, you had to submit things and financials, and it makes you look at it in a way that you are too busy probably to look at any other time. And at that level, with probably months and months of digging and refining and analyzing, that's
yeah,
that is a huge opportunity to learn and grow even if you don't make it on that soundstage.
a no doubt. That's exactly it. So that's when
Mhm.
we were going through it. There were so many positives to it, even if
Mhm.
we didn't make it. Because that's exactly right. You have to shine a light on every corner of your business.
Mhm.
Um, and then you also see how your team works under that level of scrutiny, stress,
Mhm.
um, and yourself too, because I mean, when you get to that point where you really are in the what, oh my gosh, like what this is possible. This is
Mhm.
looking like it's more and more in the realm of possibility of happening.
Mhm.
As you get closer to that, it becomes
Mhm.
there's a
The
lot on your
longer they
shoulders.
stay in it with you.
Yes.
Mhm.
So they let you know about 2 weeks before, as I said, but one of the things that's probably, the most stressful of it all is that 90-second pitch, you know? Um, you only get to do that once. And if you mess it up at all, um, you don't get to go on.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So all of that work,
All of that work,
if your
everything,
nerves get the best of you.
if they get the best of you for that 96, and for me, I can say too, um, I at the time we had momentum, right? Sales were going well, we were opening stores, we were selling franchises. So,
Mhm.
when I walked out onto that stage, I wasn't really like I wasn't looking for a lifeline.
Mhm.
I was really pitching a business,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, and I had bronchitis. I had bronchitis so bad.
Oh, no.
And when I when I get bronchitis, I get, like, it's that when you talk, you cough. You can't
Mhm.
say a couple sentences without coughing. So I might have had, and I'm not lying, like 20 cups of throat coat tea before I went out there
Oh,
because I
no.
was so
You're
afraid
right that you were
that
gonna
I
mess
would
it
get
up.
a cough and then I
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to do it. But I think adrenaline got the best of me
Mhm.
and I didn't cough, thank God. So, so it was good.
So you went through that process, you got on the stage, and you got a deal,
Yes. Yeah.
which is amazing. Tell me about the deal that you got.
When you go out there, right, you do your 30 seconds, and what's
Mhm.
interesting, what people don't really know is on TV, it looks like I'm there for 10 to 12 minutes, right?
Mhm.
But, you're really in the tank for, like, 45 minutes,
Mhm.
and they do allow you to, um they do allow you they have some advisors on the Shark Tank team that if you want to use them along the way, you can just to get a good feel of what it's gonna
Mhm.
feel like, and I remember one of them telling me, like, "When you're done, it's gonna be like speed dating for money."
Mhm.
And that's really what happens. It really is, it just then becomes a conversation about your business. And it's like, 5 people wanting to know about your business really quickly because they're all trying to make a decision.
Mhm.
Like, do they want to offer you a deal or
Mhm.
not? And so for me, they don't tell you who the sharks are until the day before. So you
Okay.
don't I think it's like a day or a couple days before. You don't know going in really for a long time who your sharks were. And
So you can't really prepare for that.
no. And for me, if I could have chosen which ones I was really looking forward to, is I really wanted Barbara
Mhm.
and Robert, and
Mhm.
neither one of them were on my panel. Um, I just felt like I would be the most aligned with them.
Mhm.
Uh, but I did have Todd Graves, and Todd Graves is the founder and CEO of Raising Cane's.
Right. So
So
he understood food
food,
business.
yes.
Mhm.
So when I heard that, I thought, "Oh, that's
Mhm.
good." So when I started the pitch and when it was all going, it's really, you get over that and then you can watch kind of what's happening with them all. And I knew Todd was engaged immediately. Because he understood the meal and he
Mhm.
understood food concepts and then
Mhm.
he understood the economics of a
Mhm.
food business, right? So he was asking me all the what's your labor, what's your cost of goods sold, all of those things,
Mhm.
just to get to prime cost really quick to know was the model solid.
Right.
Um, and that's not something that somebody who wasn't in the food business would be asking. He was
Right.
asking all the right
Right.
questions. But he was, like, talking to Mark on the side, you could see that happening, right? So I knew that they were, like, talking together, so I thought, "Oh, I think that's" in your mind, "Oh, I think that's going good."
Mhm.
So yeah, so Todd, offered me, I think my original ask was I was asking for $350,000 for 8%, um, Todd, um made me an offer first. I believe it was, 350 for, maybe 18%. I think it was 18. And then, um, and then Lori asked to be a part of that because Lori saw the, possibility in the e-commerce side, the
Right, when
shipping
that's
side.
her strength.
That's her
Yeah.
strength. Yep.
Mhm.
So they offered me a deal with 2 sharks,
Mhm.
and, we ultimately, settled at $350,000 for 17% was the final.
Did you go in knowing what your limits were for what you would
Yes.
accept?
I had taken every I had looked at every single show, thanks to ChatGPT or
Mhm.
AI,
Mhm.
and I got every show, every ask, every counter,
Mhm.
and where it all landed. So I already had a good idea as to where it would land, and then I knew my go, no go
Mhm.
range. They do allow you when you're by yourself out there because they wouldn't allow anybody else. Like my husband came to California with me, and he wasn't even allowed in the studio
Mhm.
when I was in there because he's not part of the business.
Right.
So they wouldn't even let him.
So you could have taken another team member, but
Yeah,
not
not if they weren't a
mhm,
founder or CE, not if they weren't, like, had, like,
owner.
owner of the business.
Mhm.
So, usually, more times than not, there's 2 people up there, and they can kinda,
Mhm.
talk to each other. So, they did give me the option that if I got to a place where I needed to step off and call, like, my accountant
Mhm.
or some probably not my accountant, but somebody else,
Right.
just to make sure I understood the terms of the deal and all of that. Because I guess some people maybe get you can get a little flustered by yourself
Mhm.
in the
And you
spotlight,
say yes
and
or
you say
no.
yes or no, or
Mhm.
so they do give that option when you're by yourself. But I already knew that where I was, so I already knew that his original offer was even within my.
Mhm.
But they definitely want you to negotiate. They wanna see how you are as a business person,
Right.
and so,
They expect that.
they expect that.
Mhm.
That's right. So, yeah, and what was very interesting is no shark went out, and you usually don't see that.
Wow.
They all really loved the concept.
That says so much.
Yeah, there's not one person that said, "I'm out." Mark was eating away, Damon got up on stage and um, came up, was eating because I dumped a bucket during my presentation.
So, at the studio, do they have a kitchen
Yeah.
available in case you have a food-related business that you can.
Oh, it's all set up. They have
Yeah.
somebody, and my that's where my husband helped too. They have a kitchen, they have a cook, and then they have, like, they have someone who's all working on the presentation of the food.
Okay.
So, yes, yeah,
So
it's all right
there
there.
is support there.
Yep,
So you accepted that
I
deal,
accepted that deal, yes.
and hooray, big hoopla, celebration.
Mhm,
What was the immediate aftermath? Well, I know you couldn't tell anybody for a little bit.
yeah.
I think I had heard rumblings about it, but didn't know for sure. So then once you were able to announce that you won, what's the immediate effect of that on a business?
So, we taped in June,
Mhm.
and they, again, don't tell you if you'll air.
Even
Um
if you get a deal, that doesn't necessarily mean you're on the
It does
show.
not mean you'll
Mhm.
air, because then at that point, they want you to go into due diligence and all of
Uh-huh.
that, and, they really don't want people just coming on the show for, like, they wanna try to prevent people coming on the show who really don't even want a deal just to
Mhm.
get on the show and, get the promotion. So we
Right.
really didn't know until, 2 weeks before October, they called us and said, "Okay, we're gonna air."
Quick break. I have to tell you about Unfilter. When I first started creating content, I had no idea how to pull all my ideas together. I was all over the place, a little short form, a little podcasting, nothing consistent. Working with Rich and the team at Unfilter changed that completely. Rich will bring order to your content chaos. Seriously, if you're a founder or creator who wants clarity and direction, go to unfilter.io. That's UNFLTR.io and schedule a call. Some coaching might be all you need to get moving.
So for us, the immediate impact was, we had, we knew there were some things that they coached you to get ready for, and the first one was the amount of traffic you would have on your website
Mhm.
when when you aired.
Mhm.
And we had, I believe it was over 300,000 people to our website in, like, 2 minutes, right? I
Wow.
know. But we were prepared for that.
Mhm.
There's some things that you can do to make sure that
Mhm. That you're
it
not
can
going to
handle that
crash.
you're not gonna crash.
Mhm.
So massive exposure, and then you air on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast, so it happens again,
Mhm.
not to that level, but, um so we saw, just a gigantic increase in online orders because obviously most of America is not near a brick and mortar
Mhm.
store. So for us, we saw, a huge, increase in our orders for Gold Belly. I think for those couple months afterwards, we were over 300%, of what we
It's
would
crazy.
normally. It was
Yeah.
crazy. But it also, um, garnered a ton of interest in franchising
Mhm.
because we talked about franchising, that was our growth model. That's how we were gonna, continue to grow and
Mhm.
scale. So we saw a ton of that, and then it took a little while because a lot of our stores, especially in the north, are only open seasonally. So their season is May through September.
And then they shut down.
They
So they were shut down
They were
when
shut
it
down.
aired.
Yes, they were shut down,
Okay.
and then they had months of being shut down.
Uh-huh.
But, so then we look at how did the total of 2025 do, and
Mhm.
our same store sales were up over 25%, which was, pretty, when you look at the industry and what it looked like last year, you could
Mhm.
see that that was definitely a
Mhm.
huge impact for the exposure of Shark Tank. Because what it did too, with no sharks going out and me getting a deal, I mean, it gave us so much validation,
Mhm.
right? So if a customer was kind of like on the fence or not sure, I think being able to see that, not only the opportunity for me to be out there and explain it, but then
Mhm.
for the sharks to say,
This is a great
This is a
idea.
great idea,
And the product is good too.
and the product is good. Yes.
So then ultimately the deal, you did not solidify the deal afterwards. Can you share why? What happened?
Yep. So if less than 50% of the deals actually close on Shark Tank.
Which I was very shocked to find out. I
Yeah,
just assumed that if you had a deal, you had a deal.
right. And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, you have a handshake deal,
Mhm.
and then it goes into due diligence. So lots of due diligence on that side, and that's when it's attorneys and negotiations, and it goes into a very it's at the end of the day, it's an investment deal, right?
Mhm.
So for us, we ultimately did not close. And I will say, well, I'm not allowed to really go through into the details of it all because that's just from the contracts that I signed. I can basically say that we weren't aligned on the growth strategy for the company.
Right. So if you get a deal on the show, are you allowed to back out? Or is it just it's not just the investor can back out, but either party?
Either party,
Okay, well that's good.
we can say,
Mhm.
yeah, because the deals don't always look like they did on TV
Mhm.
when it's not on TV.
Right.
So it's absolutely it can be the decision of either party
Mhm.
to proceed or not proceed. But I can tell you that both teams were um, really great to work with, um, and even though ultimately we all made that decision, they were kind enough to say, "We're here, reach out to us anytime."
That's great.
If you've got a question, if you need a recommendation, if
Mhm.
I spoke with Todd and I spoke with Lori, and their teams were wonderful.
Mhm.
Um, it just, in the beginning, when it didn't close, I will say, like, I was a little disappointed because you get to that point and you feel like, well, I'm getting all these wins.
Mhm.
They called me and then I got on and then I aired and I got a deal and it feels like closing the deal would be like the ultimate win. But as I step back here today, I realized that that was absolutely the
The
right
right
thing,
thing. Mhm.
and we were able to get so many wins.
Mhm.
Um, and and so many opportunities have come as a result. I actually am working with I just spoke at just my first keynote last week at a conference called Founderology Growth Summit, and it's a conference full of founders of food-based businesses, only founders of food-based businesses,
Mhm.
which is so neat to be in a room
Mhm.
with people that are, I mean, you all have so much in common, right? And Kathleen Wood is the person who runs that, and she's also a growth strategist. And I've hired Kathleen this year to help us with our growth strategy. She's a former CEO for Todd Graves at Raising Cane's,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
So
That's
there's
amazing.
just a lot of pull through of
Uh-huh.
opportunity for that's come our way. So
That's fantastic. So it's so multifaceted too. Like you learn a lot about yourself, you learn a lot about your business. You get a very quick, very intense education on the nitty-gritty details of your business. But then all these doors open to you, even if it's not the ones you thought. And I think that that is one of the benefits of having the guts to say yes to scary opportunities, to scary things that may or may not pan out, because those are the things that lead you to the next thing. Those are the things that lead you to the people that really need to be in your circle, even if it's not the one you're going after right now.
it's so well said. That's exactly right.
Mhm.
You just never know where that yes is going to lead.
Mhm.
It usually doesn't lead to the thing that you said yes to,
Right. That is
right?
the truth.
I
That is the
mean, it
truth.
doesn't, but it allows you to get to that next yes or that
Mhm.
other thing that you didn't see coming. Um, so and then also too, it's been so fun. My staff, I still have right now, um, most of the people that are working for me now are kids that started with me building buckets in college, who graduated college and stayed with me, or are in franchise development and marketing and stuff. And just the idea of bringing them along that ride. When do you ever, like the experiences they've had over the last couple of years, you just
Yeah.
love to be able to provide for the people
Yeah.
that are working for
Right.
you or with you.
Well, and you mentioned at the beginning of this episode about how you grew up in an entrepreneurial family, but so many kids don't. They don't get the opportunity to see that.
Yes.
Their parents have regular jobs, they draw a paycheck, which is great. That's fantastic. But if they don't get to see that in some form, it's hard to, because I grew up in a pastor's home, not a business owner home, or
Mhm.
even like somebody with just a regular 9 to 5. Like I had really kind of no frame of reference for
No,
like
right, right.
real world, employment opportunities. So you either like have some kind of innate, like come out of the womb with it, or something has to be a catalyst. And like for you to be able to provide that for some of your team along the way for them to get to see that in real time and be exposed to that is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's a great, viewpoint on that, right? Because maybe some of them haven't had it modeled,
Mhm.
but if they could take that and then at
Mhm.
some point do it themselves one day,
Yeah.
then for me, that's probably part of one of the most gratifying parts of starting a business. And then also, um, and you know this, being able to create a product that brings, you know, people together
Mhm.
and and it's connected to emotion and family and friends and
Mhm.
all of those things. And that's why I even think in our stores, um, people come into our stores and are so genuinely excited because it's just the nature of the product, right?
Mhm.
And they can't wait to share their story with you. Everybody's got some story about this meal, some way, somehow, whether it was
Mhm.
crawfish in Louisiana or clams up in New England, or like
Mhm.
everybody wants to share a story of their experience
Mhm.
with a version of this meal. And so, it just is a hospitality is such a rewarding business to be in because you can just get down, we can all get bogged in the muck
Mhm.
of what it's like to run a business, but
Mhm.
you step into that store and talk to a couple customers one day and you're
Yeah.
like, "Ugh, that's what I'm doing it for."
Yeah. Every time we have a staff meeting at Salt and Charm, I make it a priority to tell them about something a customer said or a client said or a bride said or a planner said that reminds them why. And it's not ever like, "Hey, y'all were on time." No, it's like the emotion that we created and the dream that we helped fulfill in that moment, and that is so helpful for my team who gets bogged down in the muck of chopping onions and mopping floors, that they it helps for us all to remind ourselves why we do this, what our why is, what keeps driving us. And it's not just about making the food, it's about what does the food create
Mhm.
on the table of the people who are eating it, what does it help nurture and support. So going back to like that process that you went through, what were some of the things you discovered about your business that surprised you?
Um, I think were a couple things. I realized that there was lots of opportunity for us to start concentrating on efficiencies, right? Because when you're in growth mode, sometimes you just let go of um, worrying about the efficiency, and sometimes even worrying about the tightening your we call them store level economics, right? And so when they were really under the microscope of, what was our cost of goods and what was our labor and all of that, and then you looked at the benchmarks and where they should be, once we realized that we there were so many things we could do to tighten those up so that not only us but our franchisees could be more profitable, we started looking at those things. And we realized that there was a if we could get there's a fine line as you're growing. Sometimes you when you're in growth mode, it doesn't always make sense to be concentrating on costs so much because then you can get stuck, right? But we were at that age where, or at that stage where I think it shined a light on how much more we could do on the operation side to become
Mhm.
more efficient and more profitable.
I've had so many conversations with other business owners in all kinds of industries, and the like the common thread when you start a business is that you have to say yes to everything. You have to do everything until you're at the place where you can look objectively and see what's working and what's not. But in that beginning growth stage or just launch stage, you don't really have the luxury of saying, "I'm gonna only do this," or "I'm only gonna make this many of this thing." You really just have to say yes to
Mm.
whatever however many orders you get, any of the requests, and then you're like, "Okay, I'm far enough along in this process that now I can really evaluate." I feel like I'm just now getting to that place where about Salt and Charm is about 7 years old, but only about almost at 5 years old in a brick and mortar, and I feel like just now we're able to really look at the things and figure out what is working and what isn't.
I agree, and it's tough to get out of that because I think us as entrepreneurs and business owners, I always say to my staff from the very beginning, "Hey, you never know who's walking in that door. You have no idea what opportunity is walking in with that next customer. So I want you guys to always be thinking that, right?" And so I think we always think that too. So it's hard to get to the point where you say no because there's that what if. What
Mhm,
is that next thing, especially in a growing business, right?
mhm,
But you have to be responsible to the business and to your employees by getting to that stage
mhm,
and really, I think, balancing the visionary part of the business with the realistic operational part of the business.
correct.
And as visionaries, sometimes that's hard.
Let's do all the things
Let's
all the
do all the
time.
things all the time,
Uh-huh,
and and that's hard on your team.
mhm,
I know it is. I know that, I'm becoming more intentional about that, but, oftentimes there's the visionary who, um, thinks that that all things are possible.
mhm. Are you still sitting in that visionary seat now, and then you brought in other people to help you with the analyzing and the logistics and the efficiencies so that you can stay in that position? Or are you still trying to be a visionary and
I'm still wearing all
rein
the
it in?
hats. I'm still wearing pretty much I'm wearing, 85% of the hats, I would say, but I am in the process of bringing people in. You have to get to that point where you can afford to, and
Mhm,
I still have bootstrapped the whole thing. The whole thing is
mhm,
bootstrapped. I own it all. I opened up the first a $75,000 loan on the first,
mhm,
right? I opened up my second location on no interest credit cards. Back when you were getting all those offers, I got as
mhm,
many as I could. I used a 401k rollover plan for location 3, and then I financed it all on debt, right, since then. So, there comes a point where, um, you have to you have to weigh all that. But
mhm,
I know now, especially with all that's come from Shark Tank and where we see so much possibility for the business, right? Both in our store expansions because we're moving into these, I'm calling them metro markets and so many other lookalike markets that we're at the point now where responsibly, I do need to look to bring people into
mhm,
that have scaled food concepts before, that
mhm,
understand the operations part of it,
mhm,
so that I can spend a little bit more time in the visionary seat. So, and I have time for things that got us on Shark Tank and
yeah,
Gold Belly and all of
yeah,
those things. But sometimes you you have to be in the business, and so uh, that's I would say that when I look at 2026 and 2027, there are the areas that I think I'll see the most transition.
yeah. I wish that there was a Shark Tank that wasn't Shark Tank that we could all, like, put ourselves through, like, the business boot camp of being forced to look at it, to look at it really
And submit it
and submit
so
it to
somebody could
somebody,
scrutinize it.
right? That
Yes,
is that is terrifying,
it is.
more terrifying than exciting, but I feel like it would just be so helpful.
Because the numbers, they're scary, but the numbers are the numbers,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes, we can interpret those numbers
Emotionally, really, because it's our
emotionally, because
baby.
it's our baby,
Yes.
and
You can justify them.
we can justify them, and then we can also justify them for what we think they will be. That was another interesting thing with Shark Tank is when you went out there and when you create your offer, it's based on a valuation of the business.
Mhm.
And they do not they are not interested in your future valuation of the business. It is
It's
only what it
right
is
now.
today. And that feels very at odds with what we're building, right?
Mhm.
Because we're not building it for what it is today. We're building it for what we believe it could be. So it's very hard to just talk about today, but it does make you look at it today,
The reality.
the reality of what it is today. Um, I think and that's why many people will look at that differently. Some people do look at the future value, and there are many. When you get into M&As and stuff like that, people do consider future value. But for them, it was no, no. That's the advice. Do not come out here and tell us what you think your business is going to be worth in 4 or 5 years. You just be like right
Right.
off the stage, and that'll
Right.
be a nightmare. So it did force you to look at today,
Mhm.
like the realistic number.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes the biggest opportunities like just outside of what we think is reality, realistic, and so you need to be able to balance that.
To both. And not a lot of people can split their brains that way. It's like you either live in vision land or you live in, like, CPA land, and it's, like, they're very rarely, like, intersect.
Yeah, they do. They do, and that's part of the complexity
Mhm.
of building a business,
Mhm.
right? You have to be a disciplined visionary, which doesn't always those 2 words don't always,
Mhm.
mix, right?
They
That's
don't.
they
They don't.
they don't.
It is my biggest challenge in life, I think, is to rein in
Yeah,
the things that I can see and the things that I want
and the
with what
ideas, and
yeah.
so that's why it really is good to have somebody on your team to be able to, rein that in a bit, and
Mhm.
I have surrounded myself with advisors over the last couple years that have played that role, you know, uh, because the business is the business, and that's what we have to focus on,
Mhm.
right? We have to make sure that we're right now. For the first time, I mentioned I brought on a consultant, and she's really making us get to a point where here is the annual plan. Here is the 3-year plan. Let's make sure that there's continuity and alignment between everything you and your team are doing and the plan, because
Mhm.
you know oftentimes there's the plan, but then 5 other things came up that feel really shiny and possible, right?
I am feeling attacked right now.
I know, right? Well, that's what happens, and
Yeah.
so, and it's been really good for us.
Mhm.
We're working through priority planning and making sure that we're all working, and we can decide if we wanna take one of those if we wanna add something new into it, well, we need to decide what we need to take off.
Mhm.
And so that's where I think for me, my team's biggest challenge is we they think that they know what we're doing, and then suddenly I might come in and be like, "This is what we're doing now. Look at this
Mhm.
shiny thing over here." And so,
Mhm.
that's where I think can get really in the way of alignment and growth, um, and so, and that's also why eventually you need to bring someone in who's not a visionary.
Right. Who is a data-driven, boring numbers person.
Operator who just
Operations,
is
yes.
yes, yep, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's hard, right?
It's
But that
hard.
also gets you.
Right. Goodness great, so much to think about, and
Yes.
I could talk to you forever, I feel like, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface, but I am so grateful for the information that you shared and have learned so much from you, and, I wanna schedule, like, a coffee date
Anytime.
to, like, talk more, but this is so valuable.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. I love that you're doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about stepping out and doing something different, right? I
Right.
mean, I love this. I think you have the perfect background for it, not only professionally, but even as you mentioned, just, growing up in a pastor's home and
Mhm.
talking. And I think this is a really exciting thing you're doing here, especially.
I'm learning so much, so much. Do you know of, I wish there was somewhere we could point people who aren't going to fill out the Shark Tank application, but for some kind of process for business owners, even at a young stage, to go through and to like a forced little boot camp situation where they could know what to look at and how to look at it.
Well, I mean, locally here in the very beginning, did you work with the SBTTC?
No.
Yeah, I did. I worked with both. I did a couple things locally here when I started. I went to SCORE.
I'd use Score.
Yep, I
Yes, for
went to
sure.
SCORE. I got some great ideas from
Hmm.
them. Then I did go to the SPTDC and the UNCW Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship,
Yes.
and both of those, I believe it was the SPTDC that I went through them. They really were that first step of looking at all of the components and the aspects financially of the business in the beginning, and I think that was really good for me, just to give me some guidance on the things that we need to be looking at and paying attention to. So,
There are some great local resources too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so find somebody to
Find somebody, and
find
also
somebody.
too for me, it's funny, I was part of Wilma, and I entered for the mentorship. They have a mentorship program for Wilma, and, I believe it's through the Business Journal.
It is.
And I was paired with Diane Durance, and she was the head of the UNCW-CIE, and it just so happens that in one of the meetings I had with her, I met an advisor, a growth advisor who I've had with me for about 5 years. I didn't need him then,
Okay.
but things started to get big. I
Uh,
made the connection, and then I needed him. So, like, it's
oh,
just
that's
I
awesome.
know. So I would just say, yes, locally here in Wilmington, there are so many resources
Mm.
for small businesses.
Well, we'll put some of those resources in the show notes, and I'll write a blog and make sure everybody kind of knows where to go. I definitely use Score
Yeah.
multiple times, and they were fantastic.
They were. They were. Yeah,
Mm.
they were great. That was I think I went with my first idea to
Hmm.
them, and they were wonderful and have been a big supporter ever since.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were a huge help to me. Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining me on Business from Scratch. Follow the show for more honest conversations about building a business that works for you.